Welcome everybody to episode 64 of Door Tunes. And this week I am joined by a wonderful guest, Joel Bille. Joel, do you want to kind of introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm Joel Bille, is how we pronounce it in Sweden. I'm from Gothenburg, Swedish West Coast. Been composing for video games for a few years now, actually. I'm slowly starting to gain some confidence in calling myself a composer. uh, Currently, we're working on my seventh, proper game.
Oh wow!
Sorry.
Oh wow!
Oh wow.
So what was
uh,
your what was the first game that you did?
The first game I did was actually a student project at my older brother's university, who was studying game design in Skövde in Sweden, uh, which actually just came out on Switch a few weeks ago. So
Oh,
they've been working on developing that. So that was the start. Yeah, and from there I've been working with him, actually my brother, on a lot of games, which later moved me into Zoink Games, a studio in Gothenburg that I've been working with
how
lots.
did you kind of get that relationship? How did that relationship start with Zoink?
Actually, it started with my brother working there, to be honest.
Connections.
Connections, that's how it works, I suppose. But it was kind of a funny story because they were looking for a composer for the Stick It to the Man. And my brother told his boss that my younger brother makes some music, maybe he can join him. And the boss was like, great for him. But very skeptical about hiring somebody's baby brother to do the music. But I put together a quick demo of 3 tracks and got the job. So I suppose it was somehow on my own merits. And since then I've been there basically in lot. This is the 4th production I do with them that I'm working on currently.
You worked on one of my favorite soundtracks. I can never say it. Faye.
Yeah, see.
Faye. Um, Beautiful. And as you know, I just recently got the vinyl, which I absolutely love. Um, how did you go? How do you go about the process of kind of creating music for the different games? Do you find that there's a different process for each one, and there's a different starting point?
Mm. Um, I've kind of noticed now that I've been doing this for a while, I've started, see more patterns. I've been diving into my process more deeply the last couple of years. And one of the biggest things I've learned is to allow myself to have a really slow start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I've been struggling a lot with writer's block, and um, most of the games I've doing has been more or less constantly a struggle to actually get through. Um, but I've started to allow myself to be in these early stages a lot, where I delve deeper into the core of the game of sorts. Try to talk to different parts of the team to understand their view on what we're doing and what the game is really about, and both on emotional philosophical narrative level, but also and try to talk to the designers to understand more what the, because games are so, there's so many parts that comes together somehow, and I need to figure out what my role in that as a composer is. What's the function? Why are we having music in this game? What's the music supposed to add? Um, so, and and I've had the luck to often be in projects where I've had the time to do that. And then slowly at the same time, I start composing, sitting by the piano, playing stuff without a proper idea of actually getting anything that done. It's just more a way of hanging out with the project, sort of trying to wrap these ideas that I'm starting to get from these talks into music. I've been this last year I've started to like paint with watercolors a bit. That's a thing that I like know nothing about. I know that you take the brush and you dip it into paint or water first, then paint, and then on the paper. That's like my level of experience. But it helps me a lot to like, especially on these days, you know, when you don't feel like working
Yeah.
without not least probably if you work with like a creative job you go to every day and try to. There's a lot of days when I don't want to do this, but that's for me has been a great way to like stay like in connection with like the project and try to like from a visual angle. I used to like draw random stuff like from the projects that I'm in, won't show them to anyone ever. I can also write short stories from like how I understand a character's like dilemma or situation, try to in that way just like kind of half passively just be around the project, try to uh, get on a like almost subconscious level understand it, because then I prefer my like the actual compositioning to be somewhat what do you call it,
Okay.
spontaneous, not spontaneous but more like on instinct or on what's the word, like the opposite of being really planned and like now I'm going to write a song about this, it's going to go like this.
So quite organic almost.
Yeah, organic and intuitive I suppose. But when you write for games you or like any other like context like this, you need a quite high level of precision. You can't just like write some random music and hope it fits. And that's where the issues come in, and that's what I've been working on the last year. And actually I just graduated this last year. I've been like working and studying at the same time for years, but now I actually have my bachelor's. Thank you. And my thesis, we call it thesis on bachelor's level or whatever, this big essay was basically about how to like develop or maintain a method of keeping like authentic and emotional based music even in like commission circumstances, like writing in context. So the idea is basically to do these kinds of processes where I talk to people, I try to hang out with the game or play the game as much as possible, and as a way to like direct my subconscious so that when I just sit by the piano and play, things come up that do relate to the game somehow. So that's has been like my process. I've been working with another game now, which is covered in NDAs and stuff, so I can't say pretty much anything. Sucks, but so I've had this really long period where I've and it's also okay. This gets a bit messy, but I'll try to sort it out. Like when working on games, it's rarely the case that you like get a ready game. Like here's the game, can you make music to this? Because once the game is finished, they want to release it and get it out as fast as possible. So you never have that kind of time. So you have to work with something that you don't actually know what it is until it's finished, and then it's too late. So
do you find that the way that you create the music for the games that you've worked on has an impact on the way that the game is developed or the way that the story goes, or
yeah, I think so. Sometimes that depends a lot on like how the process is with the game, I suppose, and when you as a composer get into that process. But in the case of Ghost Giant, the music was like really early. It was a few tracks that were like the main theme, and another theme was there from the beginning, really. So from there, I think they always had the music in mind when creating the game. So I think that affected like both the art style and also sort of like the general mood, because they had that to go to already.
And do you find that sort of, does that kind of worry you that you have that kind of impact, or are you kind of, you just kind of go, okay, this is just how it is and that's what I do? So
yeah, I mean I work a lot with handling all kinds of worries really. um, I'm starting to gain confidence that I I've actually never properly failed at this. So I'm starting to gain confidence that I probably like row this one in as well. But
I think,
like in the beginning of every project, it's like, oh my god, I can never do this. This is too big. This is
yeah,
something I've never done before. This is like, uh, but so, and there's also, especially as like you start to charge proper money and stuff, there's a lot of like pressure to be felt. Uh, if you're keen to that. But I really try to just do my work, make my
yeah,
music, and
it
try
must
to not
be.
like go.
I, I think a lot of composers I've spoken to almost have that like imposter syndrome thing going on,
Oh yeah,
and anxiety around their work, and particularly when you know you're being recognized, so you're getting work that is progressively bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You know,
yeah.
um, I mean, just from my own experiences, um, last year I went to Air Studios in London with Gareth Coker to watch him record the score for Ori and Will of the Wisps, and it was a beautiful day. Um, it was really interesting for me to see how the process went and how much the actual music that he originally wrote, a few months ago, and on the day, how many changes that goes through. You know,
Mm.
minor here and there with notes here and maybe a, a longer wait between a note here and etc. Or
Were they recording with an orchestra or?
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
he had a full orchestra.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well.
he had strings and brass, and you know,
Yeah.
it was beautiful. Um, but I do think that kind of, I'm trying to find the word, that kind of because it's so big. I mean, it's Air Studios, one of the best
Yeah.
studios that anybody knows.
Yeah.
To have that big orchestra,
Yeah.
all your staff, your team almost, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, I mean, it's been announced now, so I can talk about it, NDAs and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
But we left for the day, and we're going to the pub for a couple of drinks, and he just mentioned that he was scoring the new Halo, and I was like that's just huge. I mean, you don't get any bigger than Halo, really, do you?
Yeah. No.
So you can
I
imagine.
mean.
I can only
Yeah.
imagine the kind of um, anxiety and kind of pressure that if I was in that position,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would put it. I'd put it on myself. Never mind from external factors like the studio.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So yeah, I think.
Sorry, you were. I had a bad connection there for a bit. What did you say? Sorry.
Sorry, I can only imagine the kind of the kind of pressure that I would put on myself
Mm.
and the anxiety around that because it's so big. Never
Yeah.
mind from external sources like the studio, kind of the pressures that they might,
Mm.
or the kind of expectations that they might have, and the kind of they're giving you a time frame. They're saying like, okay, well, the game is out in May. It is now February. You need to be done, recorded, and finished
Mm.
by April.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, you have to work with that a lot, and I think in many of these situations, you have basically just have to fake it. I mean, if you are there in this big studio and you've been like handled this task, I mean, the only way is to just assume that you're capable of doing this and go ahead. Because
I
if you
mean,
start like doubting that in that kind of situation, you just won't work. And probably everybody feels like that for like, I don't know. It's starting to be a bit better for me, but it's still, yeah, that is really something.
yeah, I mean, as you
Yeah.
said, you've scored now 7 games.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think you've kind of, in my mind, proved to yourself that you can do this and you are good at it.
Yes, I mean that is always so. Yeah, you have like this crazy mind, here somewhere that tells you all kind of stuff. Um, but I try to actually collect like nice things people say about me.
Mhm.
I have this little folder at home where I print like fan emails that I get occasionally, or positive tweets about me or whatever, to remind me that there are actually people who appreciate what I do, because it's so hard to take in. It's so hard to take in.
I mean, your score for me, my favorite piece of yours is, as you know, because I say it all the time to you, about is from Faye and it's Skogan. There's something about that piece that really just lifts me every time I hear it, and it's, it brought me to tears on occasions because it's so beautiful. I find like personally, I'm very similar to Joe from The Flight. We get quite emotional around music. So there are certain pieces I listen to and they will make me cry. And not in a bad way, just because it's such a beautiful piece. I always remember Jessica Curry, she sent me the soundtrack for Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, probably a good 6 weeks before the release of the game. And so I've not seen anything of the game really, apart from a trailer. And I was listening to the soundtrack, and it's probably my favorite soundtrack of all time now, because I listen to it all the time. And there were two pieces in it that made me cry. And then, 6, 8 weeks later, I played the game, and it's really strange because in the game where those pieces of music were used were really, really emotionally points of the narrative. They're really emotional points in the narrative and the story. And again, that made me cry, not because the two together was just perfect, really beautiful, really emotional. And actually the game itself is, again, probably one of my favorites. I need to go back actually and play it again because
I've only played it once, and I don't think I actually listened to the soundtrack outside of the game. So I've got something to experience here.
It must be really nice for you and for anybody else that works as a composer in the video game industry to see your music come out on vinyl. Like Ghost Giant with that beautiful blue vinyl, and Faye, and and people are buying it. I've got them.
Yeah. I know you do. I'm very grateful for that.
But it must be nice for you to be able to see that people are, there is a demand there.
Yeah. I mean, and that's also like so. It's so like concrete when you can like, when somebody posts like a video of my music physically like spinning on a record in their place, and that spinning mechanics makes the sound. It's so it's a very like concrete way of realizing that my music is out there, like literally, which is it's a great
and I think people wouldn't put the time, effort and money into creating the records if A, it wasn't any good, or B, there wasn't demand, and C, it sell. Totally.
It's really I really like this vinyl thing that's going on, and it's I hope this we made a small edition. I don't actually have access to the sales numbers or anything, but I hope it like sells out completely, so we get to make more, like, or
definitely
future soundtracks will be able to come
it's
out as
crazy
well.
though, like video game sorry, she's Peggy she's biting my toes, sorry. But it's crazy, like the video game vinyl kind of industry now. I'm on a Facebook group, and it's really active, and it's really crazy to see something gets announced and they're sold out like that. It's bonkers, and then I mean, the cost of them is one thing, but they're very like Lego in that they only go up in value.
Yeah.
And like there are ones that, you know, that I bought that are worth, like I bought the Okami box set on vinyl, and it's beautiful.
Imagine.
And that was like 70 English pounds.
Wow.
And it's worth around 300 now.
Yeah, amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is indeed.
Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy.
I just remember because last time we talked, like when I was on Dark Tunes last time, it was probably like 3 years ago or something. I remember you asked this again about like game vinyl and stuff. That was just after Fear was released. And I remember that we were like in the first process of making the Fear vinyl back then, but I wasn't allowed to say anything. So I was like, yeah, that would be great, I think, if that would hypothetically happen.
And now we're here.
Now we're here. Like 3 years later, it was a crazy long process. It was delayed 100 times of different reasons, and there was like one like third-party kind of game merch company that was supposed to do it first, but then they dropped out after like postponing it for like half a year. So, and then we need to figure out like how to ship these kind of things internationally. I can't like send vinyls in pizza boxes to Argentina.
It's crazy though, because I've seen on numerous occasions where companies who do create the vinyls, like IM8-bit or, you know, whoever, they go through a process to create that that soundtrack. And I've seen it where people produce bootlegs, and the companies who are going to bring out the actual official one decide not to do it because someone's just, you know, done it by themselves. I'm not a massive fan of the kind of bootleg industry.
Like bootlegging the vinyl?
Yeah. So like, you know, the Smashing Pumpkins?
Yeah.
The band, you know, their album Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness?
Yeah, maybe.
One from a long time ago. Like the cover is like a big star and there's like, it's beautiful artwork.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Someone created a Metroid vinyl, and they base it kind of like on real albums. Like there's one for Mario that's like based on, oh god, what's his name? I can see him. Johnny, he died a few years ago.
Not sure.
Oh, I can't remember. But there's like, yeah, they're all these. I'll send you some examples. But yeah, people like the companies then see these being released and they kind of go, well, we've spent, you know, 2 years trying to do this and get it out officially, but now we can't now because this is out in the wild. So they kind of ruin it for themselves almost.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Yeah, it really is, and it is quite expensive to produce vinyls. I mean, you have to charge that kind of amount to even go around. I mean, we made a small edition of 200 copies, and even if we sell all of them, I'm not sure they even go even out on that. So it is. It's not easy even without bootlegs being out there, of course. So.
Yeah. So. What's kind of next for you? I know obviously you can't speak about certain things, but you know, NDAs. I love those letters, NDA.
It's actually the first time I actually have like written an NDA or like signed an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just been like more don't tell anyone basis, but this is like proper juridical stuff. But I'm working with this game for a company with a publisher. I think it is going to be announced pretty soon.
Cool. Do you find that when you're doing, like for example, when you scored Ghost Giant, do you find the way that you scored that was different from when you scored with Faye? Obviously, you talked about you kind of talk with the team, you kind of do drawings, you do all that. Is that the same that you did for both of those?
Ghost Giants was different because there was I had my like band with me there, Bortre Rymden, It was the process also was more like when they first showed me the like prototype of Ghost Giant, which was like really early. It was while we were still working with Fate back in 2017 maybe or something like that, or 16. I showed them like a couple of our songs, and I was like, maybe we could use this for the game, and then they really liked that. So then I continued to working with that kind of stuff throughout the game. So the main difference was that I was really early. We set like the tone somehow. Like before the game was even actually in proper development, we had a good idea of what the music would be for it.
It's such a little game as well. I was playing through it.
Ghost Giant.
Oh, yeah, Ghost Giant, yeah. And unfortunately, my PlayStation died, so I've lost all my saves, so I have to start it again.
No. Did you play through the whole thing? Did you get through the whole game before it crashed?
No, I got to a point where I had to, weirdly, throw a basketball at a vehicle, I think, to move it.
Yeah, you should definitely play the whole game. It's
definitely. Yeah, it's on my
it's
list.
not that long either.
No, and
so it's actually probably the game that I've been working on that I'm like the most proud of. Like I mean I've had like several like men in their 40s crying over story moments in that game.
Yeah,
which is like a really like a solid approval of because it's very like emotionally based, that game. And it's got a really nice narrative. It's the first time we're working with it's like big acclaimed Swedish writer who's been working the story, and yeah, it's been like really impactful. And I've seen like some comments on YouTube of people. It's difficult to like go into details without spoiling the game, but like it's had some actual like impact on people's life. And
all I've ever seen is positive things being said about it. Really.
Yeah, it's been crazy positive like response. And since it's a VR game, it's kind of limited to a like a smaller audience, but
maybe that makes it a little bit more special.
Yeah, I think so. I think this game is really special because it is VR. It really like immerses you into the story even more, and it's probably even easier to like reach out to these like emotional connections with the players.
And it's really cleverly done. Really cleverly done from what I played.
Yeah, that's
beautiful as well. Really is beautiful. Oh, I think we've got a slight technical issue. There we go. We had a technical issue just briefly. Yeah, it's such a beautiful game.
Oh, thank you a lot.
Really is. So I'm really excited to play it again soon. I'm working my way through. I'm being quite strict with myself. So I'll play something and only play that until I finish it and then move on. You know, I'm trying to get through my, as I call it, my digital pile of shame. So I've managed to finish a couple of games in the last few weeks. And I've just started another one. I started my first VR game yesterday. And I don't know why I picked this one because it's Farpoint, and it's got I'm really terrified of spiders. And it has giant spiders. It has spiders that jump at you in your face in VR. So
yeah, I can imagine. But that's brave of you. That's probably like a great way of handling that VR therapy.
If you had to see me yesterday screaming on the sofa with my headset on.
I can imagine. But do you have? Is it a PlayStation VR or?
Yes.
Yes, because I just realized that you can get those. They're like not like well, that was the quest I was looking at. I think that it's not like that expensive. I always thought that it's like completely
No?
out of reach, but it's not that bad actually.
Yeah, and it's
I'm mostly
I,
I'm mostly afraid that if I get one, I'll get so stuck because it's like so strong, you know, the kind of like immersion level and the like the I do like have this as like everybody got some kind of need of escapism or like running away from the real world, but VR is like so powerful. I'm kind of afraid that I'll get stuck. It's always like that when after a lot of doubt, I got Red Dead Redemption 2. But all these kinds of game and also Breath of the Wild and these kinds of game that you can just like pour hours and hours and hours into. I don't really want to spend that much hours in these games, but they're so comfortable to like be in.
one of the
And
ones I like to kind of dip in and out of is
oh yeah,
Wipeout.
what was it? Sorry.
Is Wipeout in VR.
Okay. Cool.
That is crazy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've made my friends play it when they come round.
Yeah.
They used to, and they couldn't last more than a couple of minutes because it's like up, down, you know,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you
Then
can move your head around and see everything and look behind you and
yeah. Don't you get like crazy nauseous?
Weirdly, I don't, but my friends were like, can't play.
Oh yeah, yeah. I played like a really early VR like experience where you move like really really slow on like a roller coaster thing with like a narrative voice saying, and that worked really well and was turning really slowly and going up and down. And but it was so weird when you started like it was a steep uphill and you can see that okay, I'm going like soon I'm going uphill, and then it starts and the body says no you're not, and the eye says yes you are, and the brain just doesn't solve that. You know, it's just it's both uphill and flat. And then, in the end of the experience there was this like just brief part of like maybe 5 seconds where it got like really really fast and then flew out a hole in the sky and just and that was just 5 seconds and you're like wow. It's so weird.
I have one final question for you.
Okay.
Is there any current or older game soundtrack or composer that you just go, wow? I know it's a difficult question.
Yes. I'm like searching my mind for a more interesting answer, but I think I'll have to go with Austin Wintory.
Joe, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, but I kind of felt like he had like enough of recognition now. Can't we talk about somebody else? But it is amazing. I mean, I replayed Journey for a while back, and he's been doing so many games, and the level is like always really really high. You can always tell from like a few seconds that it's like his voice, and he's got like both. He's got so much like also the workmanship thing with like orchestration and like this classic composer skills, but also like this on an emotional level. Like I played Luna for a while back, the VR game, but I played it without VR. That is like the opposite of that. It's like very very personal, scaled down. It's just solo piano basically, and so I am still really impressed by him.
Yeah,
I try not to be, but he's always there. And I listen to the soundtrack of Absu. I think is really great as well.
And it's a beautiful game actually. But yeah, he's always so busy. You know,
yeah.
He never.
I don't know. I've looked through his webpage on like the games he's been releasing, and it's like a couple, 3 or 4 or 5 games every year.
And then he also does like a podcast and crazy.
I don't know. Yeah, it is.
I'm almost certain he doesn't actually sleep.
Yeah, probably. That's probably how he was. Yeah, and then he's been like touring and stuff, playing piano at the concerts. I have no idea how he's doing it.
Crazy. Well, Joel, I just want to say thank you. We've come to the end of the interview. Huge thank you for coming on the show again. It's been lovely and very different this time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Agree.
it's
I,
really fun.
I'm not even able to talk about what I'm actually working on an everyday basis. Hopefully, we can chat about that sometime in the near
Definitely,
future.
definitely soon. So
Because I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I think I'm allowed to say that.
cool. So if anybody wants to reach out to either myself or Joel, you can reach me on Twitter at evilnoob, and Joel is Joel Bulle.
Yeah, it's an old typo that stuck.
No worries. So again, thank you, and we will see you hopefully again soon.
Yeah, thank you for this. Very nice to be here.
Pleasure.